recruiting. Shea Dixon covers recruiting for Go247 as good as anybody in the business. He is back with us here in 2021. Following, make sure you are a member at 247 Sports. Go247 is National Signing Day approaching here in February. Shea, good morning. Happy New Year, buddy.
Good morning. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Everything to you and to T-Bob and to everybody over at the studio.
You got a good Sam Nader story? You've been around LSU football for a while.
Oh, man. Usually he's everywhere. That's what everybody always says, right, is that he's all over the place. And I can remember in my early days, we would be roaming back whenever the media could go on the sideline at football games and recruits could actually visit during the game light years ago. I would be roaming around. This is probably right after college. God, this is 15 years ago or something. And the NCAA would put in a rule that, you can't, if a kid's on campus on a visit, you couldn't talk to him, even though I could talk to T-Bob or whoever's on the visit, on the phone or whenever. But once he's actually checked into his visit and on campus, I'm not supposed to be talking to him. Well, let's say I would bump into T-Bob or whoever on the sidelines and, hey, man, what's up, man? How's it going? But I would be thinking in my head, okay, there's 5,000 people out here, but if Sam Nader happens to see me, I'll get in trouble. So don't do anything. Don't do anything. Shea, don't do it. What's up, T-Bob? How you been? And then right out of nowhere, hadn't seen Sam all day. Shea, you're not supposed to be talking to the kids. Well, busted. So, yes, he's kept a good eye on LSU football for every angle for a long time.
Titled the grandfather of the program, it seems fitting with the
Godfather.
The news there. Austin Thomas could be coming back or is coming back. Still yet to be determined on his role. You got any insight, or do you have a feeling on where he may fit in on his second stint at LSU?
I mean, I think from all I've heard, it's that GM title again, which is something that we saw him and a handful of others sort of pioneer in terms of adding what's really become these like not shadow staffs, but building out your staff more like an NFL program would, which Ed Orgeron's been a huge, proponent of. He hired Austin Thomas and put him into that GM role before. He's now bringing him back. He's built up this huge pool of analysts with guys who've been in the NFL for a long time, a lot of guys who are up-and-comers. So I think that it'll probably be one of those roles where you oversee and have a hand in a bit of everything that comes with kind of helping manage and run a football program and the football operations building. And certainly that'll mean recruiting as well as, roster management, which is I don't think it's like random that we're hearing about Austin Thomas coming back in a year where Orgeron, or at least a few months, where he's talked about roster management being paramount, about recruiting being continuing to be as important as certainly Orgeron's made it to be. And after sort of, I don't think LSU's at a real crossroads here, but from winning a national championship to going 5-5 and having a lot of guys during the season opt out, and now having a lot of guys actually saying, hey, look, I am coming back. I think a guy like Austin Thomas can only help. I mean, it's another person who understands how the dynamic of a college football team should work. And for Orgeron, I think it's another guy that he certainly trusts and has been around the program to know that he can come in and isn't starting from scratch, that he knows a lot of the guys, not just on the team, but on the coaching staff and certainly in that football ops building.
Shea Dixon talking recruiting here with us on Off the Bench, powered every day by All-Star Toyota. So some news over the weekend comes in the sense of recruiting as LSU is watching and waiting on information from Tristan Leigh, Corey Foreman, Jordan Gilbert. All three of that news is negative. They do get positive news from a one-time Florida State commit. I know I'm going to butcher this. You can help me out on this. Kimo Macanole, who joined LSU staff. What was your recap of the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it started right before, I guess, Saturday and everything. Like you said, Kimo Macanole commits, and that gives them a second offensive lineman, and they had only signed one in December in Garrett Dellinger. Macanole is a kid who can really play a few spots for you. He is versatile coming out of Florida, and he's got some really good senior film. This is a nice pickup for them, and the thought would be that you still need more, right? Even two offensive linemen wouldn't be enough. And we went into the weekend, and I think by now, right, that everyone knew, look, Tristan Leigh, Corey Foreman, and then Jordan Gilbert. But certainly those first two were guys we had talked about for a really long time as national targets for them. We're starting to trend away from LSU. We hadn't heard the same buzz around Tristan Leigh, this past week that we had heard for 6 months ago, or even, just a handful of months ago. And the same with Corey Foreman. And what we saw in the end was it was a bit cyclical for both guys. It was when Corey Foreman's process started out, and the same with Tristan Leigh, it was the local team that everyone said was the team to beat. For Leigh, it was Clemson. For Clemson, it was Southern Cal. And they ended up, Foreman at one point committed to Clemson, backed off. Both flirted heavily with LSU and with a lot of other teams around the country. But when they had to sit back down with family and go over a final decision, Leigh ends up at Clemson, Foreman ends up at USC. Those are the schools closest to their home. And that's not the big shock. I think a lot of people, I'll speak for myself, I was very surprised that both of those guys, and really Leigh, who had kind of really publicly the past few weeks drummed up, which way would he go, and LSU, Oklahoma, Florida, and all these staffs are sort of working overtime across the holidays trying to get him. And soon after he announces his decision, Clemson reveals that he's already signed. And now, look, Corey Foreman said, even in December, I'm probably going to sign somewhere right now, and I'm just going to keep it quiet, and then I'll announce it. But the Tristan Leigh camp sort of came out and very matter-of-factly said they weren't signing anywhere and were undecided, and they would let everybody know in February, and instead he makes his announcement in January, and boom, he had already signed. And I think a lot of people said, well, how does that work out? Why are these other teams, how do they not, they don't know that he already signed? Obviously, the only way they would know is if he told them. Clemson and Dabo Swinney keep a lid on it. The Leigh camp keeps a lid on it. And I can tell you that LSU, Oklahoma, and Florida staffs were left scratching their heads a bit, thinking, okay, this would have been info that we could have known a month ago and moved on from.
Yeah, look, is there any idea that maybe it was like an NDA with NBC or anything, Shay? Have you heard anything like that?
Well, Tristan Leigh's mom mentioned that they signed something that they wouldn't say where they were going, but that's no different than they're not putting them in jail if someone finds out, if they tell college coaches that they're not going to that school.
Yeah.
And it's no different than every other year at the All-American game or the Under Armour game or whatever it might be. I think the sticky spot we've got ourselves in now is a lot of these kids do have the opportunity to sign in December and do have an opportunity to announce in January. And if you want some suspense to it, that just means not telling anybody publicly that, hey, look, I did already sign with a team in December. But also, we saw that sort of handled the right way with a handful of kids in this class who signed in December. That team knew they signed. They didn't really get into the recruiting process further in those next few weeks. And they kind of just say, look, lay low, signing day's over, Christmas comes, New Year's comes, and then I'll reveal my choice. And the other team sort of already knew that they had signed. That wasn't the case with Tristan Leigh. So I think that's what kind of caught people by surprise. And we'll see if it really becomes a trend or if this is sort of a one-off in a really odd year of recruiting.
So a few quick ones here to close out, Shay. How many spots are now left?
So they're at, 20 signees from December. They've got 2 commitments in Savion Jones, a D-end, a really talented D-end out of St. James. I love him. I think he's going to be a great player. And then we talked about Kimo Makaniole, offensive lineman, committing. That gives them 22. So 3 open spots. Steve-Bob, I think, no doubt you're looking at, even with the good news that's rolling in, right, about the O-line, you still don't know what Deculus is doing. You still don't know what Dare Rosenthal's doing. That could be a couple spots that open up. Obviously, Cam Wire can play that tackle spot on either side. But I think they probably still want to find some immediate help there. I would watch Harvard grad transfer Eric Wilson. He's Liam Shanahan's buddy. He was going to go to Auburn, then they fired that staff. It just seems that if things can work out for LSU, that he would be a nice fit for them. But with a few open spots, Brian Thomas is out there, out of Walker, obviously. You've got some other offensive linemen, Jordan Moko, the number 1 offensive tackle in the JUCO level, has LSU in his top 3. So that would be a guy. And then probably just the best available. Do you want another corner since you only signed 1? There's a couple of guys out there. Do you need a safety after missing out on Jordan Gilbert, or do you feel good about the 3 guys you've already got? And I think LSU is going to be doing a lot of sort of self-evaluation over these next couple of weeks as these kids all also announce, hey, look, am I coming back or going pro? That deadline will come up at the middle of the month. And then you get a real feel for what your needs are. And I'll continue to argue, and I don't think I have to argue Ed Orgeron too much on this. He said he'll certainly explore the option of graduate transfers even beyond Eric Wilson, because the NCAA is giving this one-time free waiver to transfer this offseason. And it's a behind door number 2 proposition here. You don't really know what's going to be out there, but if you save one of these spots past February, I would be willing to bet that some immediate help pops into the portal, and it might be at a position you need.
Any impact on this next signing day from the recruiting, from the coaching searches?
You know, I thought about that the other day, and I don't think it'll be that big, right? Because like they need some of these final 3 spots, you need some offensive linemen, and they've got James Craig in place, and they're not replacing that spot. So I don't think not having an offensive coordinator is that in play right now is that huge of an issue for 1 or 2 of these O-line targets who know the hire is coming. And then I look at even on defense. Do you need another corner? Well, Corey Raymond's there. Do you need a best player available? Ed Orgeron can handle stuff like that. So if they had 12 signees or something, yes, you would be needing to make these hires yesterday and try to get things going. But the fact that you only have a few open spots in the class and a head coach like Ed Orgeron who knows exactly what he's doing in recruiting, I don't think the hires are that big of an issue at all in terms of how they finish out this cycle.
247sports.com is where you can keep up with all the information. Shea Dixon is with us just about every week, updating us before National Signing Day on what the latest is on recruiting. Always appreciate it, Shea. Good to catch up.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, guys.
Close at hour 1 next.